Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, I'm Rini and I share DIY home decor videos. Christmas is just around the corner and today I have some DIY air dry clay ornament ideas for you. So before we dive in, I would love for you to subscribe if you haven't already and click the bell icon to get notified every single time I post a new video on my channel. So let's get started. To make our Christmas tree ornaments, I used Crayola air dry clay. I also used a pack of these cookie cutters which came in 4 different shapes. I laid out a piece of parchment paper to prevent the clay from sticking to the surface. Then I grabbed a large chunk of clay kneaded and molded it into a ball. Using a rolling pin, I started rolling out the clay. I continued to roll out the clay evenly until the edges were about a 1/4 inch thick. After that, I took the star-shaped cookie cutter and pressed it down to cut out the shape. I removed the excess clay and popped out the star shape. Then I dipped my finger into a little bowl of water and smoothed everything down, including the edges. I grabbed a clay modeling tool with a pointy end and poked through one of the corners of the star. We want it large enough for a twine to pass through. Then I used the extra clay that was left, kneaded it and rolled it out again for the next ornament. I took the circle cutter and pressed it all the way down. Then I used a smaller circle to cut out a crescent moon shape. I went ahead and smoothed down the edges and pierced through both the corners of the moon shape. To embellish it, I took a few of these tiny square mirrors and randomly placed them onto the clay and pressed them down. For making the next ornament, I rolled out a chunk of clay. Then I used this cookie cutter to cut out a flower shape. After that, I took a smaller star-shaped cutter, placed it in the center of the flower and pressed it down. So we ended up with this beautiful cutout. I pierced one of its sides like so and smoothed down the edges. For the next 2 ornaments, I rolled out a large piece of clay. I used this cutter to cut out a circle first. Then I used the same cutter to cut out another circle. I grabbed the smaller circle cutter, placed it into the center of the first circle and pressed it down. I smoothed the edges down and used my clay modeling tool to make 2 piercings parallel to each other. Then I rolled out a small piece of clay and after making sure the shape I was going to draw confined within the smaller circle, I drew a small Christmas tree. Taking a precision knife, I went ahead and cut out the shape. I was cutting out one side at a time to keep the shape intact. Then I did a piercing on the top corner of the tree. Using my clay modeling tool, I drew some little vines all around the ring. This ended up adding some more details to the ornament. For the next ornament, I took the circle that we cut out before. After smoothing it down, I took my pointy clay modeling tool and started to pierce through the circle. While doing so, I left an uniform space from the edges. Also, I tried to keep about a 1/4 inch space between each hole. I used a few pieces of dried grasses to imprint in the clay. You can use any greenery of your choice. I pressed the pieces down and gently removed them by holding the ends. Next, I took a heart-shaped cookie cutter and pressed it into the clay. I removed the excess part and popped out the cutout. Then I pierced a hole on the top of the shape. After that, I started rolling the clay into noodle shape. I grabbed 2 equal pieces and started to slowly twist them to make it look like rope. I started scoring horizontally along the center of the heart shape and attached the twisted clay piece right on it. The scoring technique helps the clay to stick better. Taking a precision knife, I cut out the extra ends. I continued repeating the same steps until the bottom half of the heart shape was covered with the twisted clay pieces. After that, I went ahead and smoothed down the edges. Lastly, I cut out another circle. Then I cut it into a semicircle using a ruler and a precision knife. I pierced a hole on the top of the semicircle and then using my clay modeling tool, I drew 3 arches on it while equally spacing them out. Also, I left a little space along the horizontal edge of the semicircle. Then I started to pierce some more holes right at the points where all the 3 arches start and finish. I I smoothed everything down and let the ornaments dry for about 48 hours. After they were fully dry, it was time to paint and assemble the ornaments. I started with the crescent moon ornament first and painted it with terracotta acrylic color. I was trying not to paint the surface of the mirror as much as I could, but it's totally fine. Even if we paint over the mirrors, we can always remove it later. Then I turned it over and painted the backside as well. After the paint was almost dry, I took a damp cotton bud and started to gently scrape off the paint. I went in small circular motion and the paint came off very easily. The paint has a really good metallic finish. I got this from Walmart and I'll be sure to put the link in the description box. Then I grabbed 2 wooden beads and this embroidery floss in teal color. I started wrapping the embroidery floss to make the tassel and I wrapped it about 25 times around my fingers. I cut out another piece of thread, sent it through the loops and tied a double knot on the top. Then I taped the ends of the thread and strung on one of the beads. Taking another piece of thread, I started wrapping, leaving a 1/4 inch of space from the top. I wrapped the thread for about 5 to 6 times. Then I went ahead with a pair of scissors, cut the loops and trimmed the ends. After that, I tied the tassel to the bottom corner of the crescent moon. We want to tie a few extra knots to secure the tassel in place. To hang the ornament, I grabbed a piece of cotton twine and pulled it through the top hole. Then I took the other wooden bead and pulled both the ends of the twine through it. I pushed the bead all the way down and tied a knot to secure it. Leaving approximately 2 to 3 inches of space, I tied another knot. This will make a loop to hang our ornament. I cut down the ends and we have our crescent moon Christmas ornament. Next, I grabbed the semicircle that we made. To paint it, I mixed some beige and white acrylic color. I also painted the sides as well as the back of the ornament. After the paint dried up, I went in with orange paint and painted an arch right on the previous engraving, following it as a guide. We also want the engraving to be in the middle of the painted arch. Then I used a light yellow color and painted another arch below the first one. As you can see, I left a little bit of space between 2 arches. For painting the bottom arch, I used a light blue color. Also, I went for 2 coats of paint. Using a small brush and some gold acrylic paint, I painted on the engravings to make them stand out and add a nice detailing touch to the ornament. After that, I took these embroidery flosses in orange, yellow, and grayish blue color. Using my fingers as a template, I started wrapping the thread around 15 times to make a tassel. I took another piece of thread, slipped it through the loops, and tied a double knot on the top. Then, leaving a bit of space from the top, I wrapped another piece of thread for 5 to 6 times to make the head of the tassel. Once that was done, I cut the loops and trimmed the ends to level them. This way I made 6 tassels in total, 2 tassels each of the same color. Using a comb, I brushed the tassels to unravel the strands and fluff them up a bit more. Then it was time to tie the tassels we made. I started with an orange one and after taping one of its ends, I pulled it through the back of the first hole. Then I turned it over and tied a double knot. In the same way, I tied the remaining tassels to the semicircle. I grabbed a piece of cotton twine and pulled it through the top of the semicircle. Then I held both the ends and slipped them through a wooden bead. I pushed the bead all the way down and tied a knot right above it. To make a loop, I tied another knot and snipped off the extra ends. Before I painted this ornament, I placed a piece of painter's tape on it diagonally. Then I went ahead and painted the top half of it with a sage green acrylic paint. I painted all the edges and the back as well. While removing the tape, the paint peeled a bit, which I later fixed with a small brush. For painting the bottom half of the ornament, I used a rose gold acrylic paint. Then taking a detailing brush dipped in black acrylic paint, I made these tiny dots on the green side. I also decided to paint the outer edges of the ornament black. To hang it up, I used a piece of cotton twine. After that, I taped both the ends of the twine and slipped in this brown wooden bead. Then I tied a knot above it and again another knot, leaving 2 to 3 inches of space. For painting this star ornament, I mixed some navy blue and black acrylic paint. I went for 2 coats of it and made sure the first coat was dry before going on for the second. Using gold acrylic paint, I painted all the edges of the star. I also brought the paint a little bit over the edges like so. I grabbed some gold leaf and tore tiny pieces. After that, I used Mod Podge to stick them onto the ornament. First, I applied a little Mod Podge on the surface, placed the piece on it, and applied some more Mod Podge to seal it in place. This way, I continued to attach the gold leaf pieces onto the surface of the ornament. Once that was done, I took a piece of jute twine and 3 wooden beads. I taped both the ends of the twine, pulled it through the hole, and then I strung on all the 3 beads. To secure them in place, I tied a knot, and to make a loop, I tied another one like so. This completed our star ornament, and I loved how gorgeous it turned out. For painting our next ornament, I mixed up some off-white and brown acrylic paint. Taking some dark green acrylic paint, I painted over the imprint. We would also want to water down the paint just a little bit so it reaches into all the crevices and to get a pretty watercolor effect as well. After that, I grabbed a piece of raffia and twisted one of its ends to stiffen it a bit. Then I started to wrap the raffia. First, I brought the raffia through the back, pulled it almost all the way through, leaving a little tail on the back. Then I held the raffia piece and went over and under and again pulled it through the adjacent hole. This way I continued wrapping it all the way around. After that, I trimmed the extra end and hot glued both the ends to the back of the piece. To hang the ornament, I cut a piece of jute twine and pulled it through. Then I grabbed a wooden bead, pulled the ends of the twine through it, and tied a knot. Then again I tied another knot on top, holding both the strands to make a loop. I went ahead and snipped off the extra ends, and this completed our clay imprint ornament. To paint the ring, I mixed up off-white with a small amount of brown and yellow acrylic paint. I started to paint the entire ring with the same color, including the edges. For the tiny tree, I went for a dark brown acrylic paint. Then I watered down the same chocolate brown acrylic paint a little bit and started to paint over the engravings with a small brush. Then I took a large jump ring, opened it up, and attached the tree to it. Again, I attached the jump ring to the other part and closed the ends. Then I grabbed a bead and cut down a piece of twine. I pulled the twine through the top of the ornament, pulled both the ends of the twine through the bead, and tied a knot on the top. Then finally, I tied another knot, leaving some space. This finishes off our wreath ornament with a dangling Christmas tree. For the last ornament, I used dark gray acrylic paint to paint the top half of it. I also painted the edges, and then I went in with a small detailing brush to fill in the remaining areas. For the bottom half of the heart, I went for an off-white acrylic paint. Then I grabbed a bead and a cotton twine. I pulled one of the ends of the twine through the hole, and then I strung on the bead. I tied a knot above it and went ahead to tie another knot to make a loop. Finally, I trimmed the ends and we ended up with this heart-shaped ornament. And this is how our DIY air dry clay Christmas tree ornaments turned out.
That's all for today, and I really hope you liked the video. Please let me know in the comments below which ornament was your favorite. If you recreate any of these DIYs, I would love to see them. You can tag me on Instagram at DustyHues. Thank you for watching. I love you guys so much. Happy holidays, and I'll be seeing you in my next one.